Trust and Soda here in Dublin, and basically our values are all about diversity, inclusion, and it's really why I wanted to kind of bring together similar-minded folk, and also to have our wonderful panel here of speakers. We actually invited Tenny to join us today. Tenny is our charity partner this year. So they're actually a non-profit organisation. They provide basically advocacy, support, and training for pieces are sorted. I think everyone. But they work very closely with trans people, basically in Ireland, and we basically I suppose in Ireland we kind of have a disproportionate amount of trans people who are unemployed. So obviously we really want to be able to help with that. And so we invited Sarah here, the chairperson of Tenny. Thank you very much for joining us. Sarah, you're a bit of a legend in the trans community. and as we know from this week as well, now you're taking a much needed rest, I would say, from your duties, or maybe not. But we're going to have a panel of speakers as well after Sarah, but I'd just like to invite you to the stage now, Sarah, just to say a few words. You can take a seat.
Can I stand?
Yeah, if you want, yeah, 100%.
Oh, are you giving me a mic? Do I need a mic? Can anyone hear me? I'll put the mic down. Okay, first of all, I just need to ask somebody who's watching the clock, because I will keep talking. Okay,
I'll grab the stopwatch.
Tonight I just want to talk a little bit about, first of all, some of my own story to share it, because I think that's just to give you a flavour of what it was like back in the big, bad, dark old days, and then also a little bit about what it is to be trans today in Ireland, but also, lastly, why it's important, why pride is really important, and I'll touch on the workplace, because I know that's part of our remit tonight. Well, I had thought maybe at one point I might just do my comedy show, but I won't. It's called Testosterone Inverted. But tonight we'll talk a little bit about, as I say, what it means to be trans in Ireland today. So first of all, just to give you an idea a little bit, I came out 30 years ago this year actually. There wasn't very many trans people in Ireland. In fact, there wasn't many trans people you would see even in the UK. A lot of it you would find on the front pages of some of the tabloids. In a very disrespectful, horrible way, you would read stories about how we were either perverts, victims, or in a voyeuristic way, people might see you on TV following you around some random shopping centre, or sitting at your desk or at your table in your mirror putting your makeup on. But nobody really examined what it meant to be trans at the time. So coming out was quite dangerous, it was quite daunting, it was quite difficult, and also at the situation for me, I was also married with 3 kids. But my story starts back a lot before that, because again, for most trans people's stories actually start much earlier. I have a very big moment in my life around the age of 17, and we were talking about it earlier on, and I went to a music gig of a band that some of you may or may not have heard of, but it's a band called the Tom Robinson Band. They're kind of one well-known song they'd be known for is 2468 Motorway, or more importantly, Sing If Your Lad And I went to this band were hugely important to me around my politics. They were very much fighting in Thatcher's Britain at that point for, gay rights, but also workers' rights, etc. And it was very much a political band. So they stood for everything I stood for. And one of the things was about going to that band and standing in the middle of University College Dublin that night among 600 predominantly white, predominantly middle class, predominantly men or boys, whichever way you want to put them, standing at a time when it was criminal to be gay in Ireland, singing "Sing If You're Glad to Be Gay." It really empowered me. It unbelievably empowered me. So I went home, and the next night I sat down in front of my dad and I told him I was a girl. My poor dad kind of nearly had a heart attack because he didn't know what to make of it at all. But in fairness to him, unlike a lot of other trans people or other gay people, I wasn't thrown out of the house. I wasn't told that I would get cured. I wasn't, didn't have a negative result on it. He tried to sit down and explain it and talk it out with me. And in fairness, he decided it was a phase I was going through and I needed a new girlfriend and I needed to get rid of the one I had. And I needed to go and kick some poor fool around the football pitch on a Sunday and all of these various things, masculine things that probably, fitted with the time. But clearly that was never going to go away. And as you can see, it never did. But it was a big struggle then from then on. And I met my wife then and then got married, fell in love, and all the responsibilities of life came on, and with those things you then have a struggle then to try and actually come out and transition, and it becomes more about other people than it does about you. As I said, I came out in 1992, and at that stage, as I say, there wasn't that many trans people around, but it took me then nearly 12 years before I transitioned, because again, with those responsibilities, with the lack of information around in Ireland, it really becomes very difficult. And it's funny because now I'm actually one of the really lucky ones, because now my family is around me. My mum is one of my biggest advocates. My daughter and youngest son, again, similarly. My eldest son, who moved in with me at 14, has been so supportive that he still hasn't moved out. He's 36 now. What am I to do? Because he is one of my best friends as well as obviously my son. But on the other hand, I was also very lucky from a workplace situation, because in 2005, having already transitioned, I had been working for myself, and I decided to try and settle down, get a good salary coming in, week out, because I was worried about not being paid. Now a trans person running a small consultancy business, it was all word of mouth, people weren't passing on my name. So I looked for a job. But again, as a trans woman, I never felt that I would be given a fair shake of the stick at an interview, so I decided to go and look for that job in my old name, trying to do my best to pretend to be a man. Now I had a bit of experience in that because I tried to do that for the previous 40 odd years, but I tried to do it more difficult now at this point. Luckily enough, I met a really great guy who gave me the job very quickly. I was telling the story. I had a 15-minute interview. The only reason I got the job was because I really liked certain bands that he liked. Music twists across my history very much. But it was down to that. He became a really good friend of mine. So I made the decision very early on to come out to him and explain that this was my life outside of work, but that I was trying to live these two lives. And that was down to the fact that I ran into my next door neighbour one day, and she apologised because she said she had knocked over my boyfriend earlier on in the day in the rush she was trying to get into her house. I had to explain that was me she was running into, and she still didn't understand this issue that I was living these two lives. So, because she knew me, had moved in 2 years before. But in fairness, the company itself, my manager and my company, were really supportive. They took this in their stride. They didn't really know anything about it. One of my senior managers actually said to me, "We don't even have gay people in our job. We have never heard of anybody who's gay in our company." Our company is a massive multinational. It has 55,000 people globally. The fact that it's maybe based in Ohio might have a lot more to do with the fact they don't gay people. But the real point is that they actually took the steps to find out more about how to support what they seemed to think was their first ever transgender employee. And they allowed me to develop that kind of pathway through that. And what's key about that is that's exactly what all companies probably should be doing right now. Everybody should be trying to take those steps in partnership with your employee to develop how they should transition in the workplace, or for that matter, how the company should develop the hiring policies or their interviewing policies before maybe a trans person might even apply for a job or get interviewed. And one of the things we want to try and look at tonight, obviously, is around what it means to be trans in Ireland today. Because there's a lot of negativity going on out there at the moment, as some of you may have seen more recently in the press and the national broadcaster. And I'd just like to kind of give you a little bit of background without getting into that negativity, because I don't like going into negativity. As I said again, I think it was earlier, positive visibility matters. And first of all, let's just be very clear here. The trans community, the World Health Organization, says that there's about 1% gender variant people in the world, approximately. That can mean a lot of different things, gender variance. However, what they do also say is that they're 0.3 to 0.5% of the world population will socially, medically, or legally transition at some stage. So, let's say in an Irish context, we're probably talking about 15,000, maybe 16,000 with the new figures that came out yesterday from the census, but about 16,000 people. We would know that there's probably an awful lot less than that. There's probably more like about 4,500 to 5,000 people who are trans in Ireland today. So, pretty minuscule community, and yet marginalised. And yet we seem to be talked about as if there's millions of us in armies about to take over the world. And that goes across the whole, not just in Ireland, but across Britain and across the United States as well. We can see these stories that are constantly coming out, creating fear, demonising our community, creating a sense that trans people need to be feared in every single way. And I think when we delve down into these experiences of individuals, it's the opposite. When individuals talk to each other and sit down and discuss what your concerns are, and we are open and respectful and reasonable, actually you'll find that there's nothing more than all that trans people want to do is live their lives the same as everybody else. We're not looking for anything more, we're not looking for anything less, we just want to be able to live our lives. And now, like an old person without any glasses, I've forgotten where I am.
Scroll.
Well, I hadn't been reading it, so that's always my mistake. I will say this is, as Brandon mentioned earlier, I am the chair of TENI. I am about to retire. This is my six days left as the chair. I'm sitting outside with my colleague earlier, and I had come back from the bathroom and I realised, and you may write this down in your diaries, this is my last ever speech as the chair of TENI. Because tomorrow's Pride and I'm not speaking, and then I go away to Canada for a couple of days, so this will be the last time I speak as the chair. I might speak again, but not as chair. Going back to where we are today. So again, just a little bit, I'd like to give you some information around what it means to be trans. So currently, in order to be identified in the gender that we are, we have a thing called the Gender Recognition Act. And the Gender Recognition Act was brought in 2015. Ireland was one of the last European countries actually to enact any type of legislation at all. I think Albania were the only country after we had. However, what we were one of the most progressive countries that brought in type of legislation. We brought it in with legislation known as self-determination, where I decided what my gender is, without anybody else's permission, without any request of any other person. I say who I am, and as you all do. I'll ask a simple question. Who has a gender identity in the room? Everybody. Every one of you have a gender identity in the room. It just happens that our gender identity is different to that has been assigned at birth. But everybody chooses your gender identity because you accept what has been chosen for you at birth. And it's key to understand that little nuance, that we do not accept what's been given at birth. We have a very different gender identity. But it's key for everybody to understand that that's all it is. It's about understanding that our gender identity is not what was assigned, where yours is because you've accepted it. And gender recognition provides that opportunity for us to change that gender on our legal documentation. And in Ireland, the fundamental document of identity is the birth certificate. So it's important that we're able to change that marker on our birth certificate. It's not our passport, or we don't have identity documents, etc. But it's key. And yet, only 1,000 people in Ireland have availed of that legislation to date. Well, it might be a little bit more because that was at the end of May. But there's approximately a little over 1,000 people. And that's only 1/5 of the figures I was talking about earlier. And 50% of them are trans women. So we're now down to 500. Look at this big push about demonising trans women, and there's about 500 of us availing of this document that gives us the freedom to do what everybody's complaining that we're doing. So it's key to understand that a lot of this negativity, when you really dig down into it, is untrue. And not just untrue, but it is being put out there to demonise a very small marginalised community. So going back to the workplace, what can companies do? What can colleagues do? And I come back to one word, and that is respect. Everything we talk about is respect. Companies don't need to do a whole lot more. They don't need to really change a lot of their policies. They don't really need to kind of go all out and single out the trans person and go, we need special treatment. Actually, when you look at the main criteria of everything you do, and the way you should be treating every employee, is the way you should treat the trans person. Because the same way as you may organise diversity and inclusion policies, you should also be looking at maternity leave, people with disabilities, all of these things that you do on a natural day today, you should be looking to do for the trans community. And the same way when you're looking for your hiring policies or your interviewing processes, the same thing. You should take all of this into account, that there's nothing unusual here, this is not rocket science, you just need to add this in to your policies. And colleagues as well, we tend to talk about it in a big, big way. Oh, this is a massive change. It's not really. This is the same person that you've worked with all day long, every day. This is the same person that you've had meetings with, etc. And really all it is about allowing that person to be themselves. And it's giving them the respect for what they're saying to you. This is my name, this is my pronoun, and this is how I present myself to the world. So it's key that you try to allow that space, the same way as the respect you would ask of every other colleague. And again, I go back, I said this to somebody the other day, a lot of women get a lot of comments about the way we dress in the workplace. Constantly. Even sometimes from our own female colleagues. We're constantly getting commented on what way we wear. Well, actually, it's very similar. We shouldn't be doing that, and therefore we shouldn't be doing it the same ways if a trans person comes in about how they present themselves and express themselves. And the same with the guys. It doesn't matter what way you present. It's all about being given the respect for the way you want the world to see you and the way the world is treating you. So again, I go back to trying to say, it's not about rocket science. I forgot the rest of my jokes, by the way. I'm getting very serious. So yeah, so it's about trying to support your transgender colleagues in the workplace. How are we doing for tonight, Rob? So I will have to use the comment. So it's about trying to support your transgender colleagues in the workplace, but it's also about trying to support your friends or even your family if they come out, and try to understand what we are going through and what you can do to help. And don't do the things that you shouldn't do. Don't ask what our dead name is. Don't ask what we looked like before. Don't ask what surgeries we've had. Don't ask what our anatomy is. These aren't important. Just take the person, because again, you wouldn't ask each other these questions. So to try and support your colleagues, just respect is the key as far as I'm concerned. It's the key thing that we all need to work towards. We're always open to discuss in reasonable terms terms, but not every trans person is ready to do that. Not every trans person is able to explain what they're going through or what their journey might be. So it's about trying to engage in a way that is respectful to them and allow them to share their story when they need to. Not everybody is okay to stand up here and tell you about, you know, what my son might say or what my boss might say, or the story with the fact that after telling my boss, he went home, called into his mother, told his mother that what I had said, but also told his mother that he wouldn't be probably going drinking with me or going to music anymore. And she's all 22 stone of her got out of the sofa and walked across the room and slapped him in the head. All 44 years of him. And he then went home and told his wife what his mother had done, and she slapped him in the head as well. And he rang me the next day and apologised. And like, you know, so people come on the journey, but it's about that. We allow these spaces for everybody to come on that journey and to come together rather than separate and marginalised. So yeah, so a key, I'll leave you with this small story again, and this is from a workplace point of view. Around the time again when I came out, and I'd already been out for many years at this point, one of my biggest clients actually had taken a lot of it in his stride. And this particular individual was pretty masculine, macho, kind of, you know, I've been out with him before, and crikey, there was a lot of it I used to shrink sometimes with some of the things he'd go out with. But he had actually taken a lot of it in his stride. And I couldn't understand how he got so straightforward, going from treating me as this particular person over here to treating me now the way I was talking to him and presenting to him, and also going to meetings with him, etc. And as I found out, defending me too, which was quite interesting. Because I work in the construction industry, it's not always the easiest place to be. I don't directly work in the industry, I work for a manufacturing company, but I'm constantly on building sites every now and then. Well, every now and then, I suppose. But I went to him and I said to him, I said, you know, Colin, he's proud of what he's did. And I said, Colin, do you mind me asking, how did you take it so well? Why did you kind of run this thing right through? And he said, well, it was funny because he said, and there is a backstory to this, but he said himself and his wife at the time, who was his financial controller of the company, had been talking about it the night after I had told them what was about to happen. And he said we were discussing it. And he said one key story came across in both of our conversations, both to each other. And he said, if company that I work for, CPG, were actually about to treat me with the respect that they were giving me, imagine the way they're going to treat their clients. And it was this light bulb moment for him that he saw that the way the company was going to behave would be transferred across to their clients. And in fairness, that is true. It's the way the company does treat their clients with really great respect. But for him, that's all that mattered. It was this, he could see me as the individual I was, but he could also then relate it to his day-to-day work and the money he was going to make as well. And what I could do for him in that context. So, I'm going to leave it for you because I know we've got a great panel now. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I really appreciate that. And in fairness, like, I think especially in recruitment, like that's me, Tash, Leona, Ash, like I think we have a real responsibility as well to obviously, you know, be inclusive, be respectful, and also to help people get jobs, because we know how difficult it can be, even from what you were saying there as well. I also came from the construction industry, so I never thought I'd be standing here 10 months later doing this. I know how bad it can be at times. So yeah, no, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. So yeah, we're going to have a short panel discussion as well. Sarah will be back joining us again. We also have Lilith from Tenny, Tash from Trust and Soda. We also have Aisling from Dogpatch. Again, actually, Dogpatch, thank you very much for graciously hosting us. I really appreciate it. Leona from Trust and Soda as well.
I'm not that scared. It's fine.
That works.
No rotten. There was no rotten tomatoes thrown in.
Yeah, the last time I was holding one of them, it was at a karaoke event, but I won't subject anyone to that just yet. Maybe later, but not now.
Can I make a comment about the construction industry?
Yes.
Somebody asked me once how I was treated in the construction industry, specifically in the company, and I said, well, the company actually treated me really, really well. They treated me as the woman I am, but the same as every other woman, badly.
Yeah, that was what I was getting at when I said about the construction industry, but but I suppose the best way to just kind of kick it off is just to have everyone introduce themselves, your pronouns, what you do in life, and obviously your roles in your jobs as well. Tash, do you want to kick it off?
Oh, is this? Yeah. No, it's working. My name's Natasha. I prefer Tash. Thanks. My pronouns are she, her. I am part of Trinnovo group. I am a DevOps recruiter, and I am also the lead of the LGBTQ EEG, or leader of the gays, however you wanna say it. I personally identify as queer, and my partner has recently come out as trans, so both kind of gay equality, but also especially trans equality is something that's super, super important to me, and I'm just really excited to be here to celebrate Pride.
I'm loud enough as it is. So I am the communications manager at Dogpatch, where you are here in our 200-year-old whiskey vaults. So we may have some whiskey later, who knows? So I identify as a lesbian. My pronouns are she, her, and yeah, I'm super happy to be hosting this event today. It's super important to me that we host this, we represent, we promote awareness. It's super important to me, but also that especially in the tech and startup industry, it could be predominantly male-oriented, and it's hard to get that representation there. So I'm glad that we are here tonight in we are the largest startup hub in Ireland. So if we can do it, then everyone else can do it around us.
Hi, this is working. My name is Luna. I am I guess, pansexual or bisexual, but I'll get into that now in a second. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a data engineering, I've forgotten what my actual job is, recruitment consultant, and I specifically work across the DACH market. Now, I am so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be talking about something that I am so passionate about and something that I genuinely advocate for on a daily basis. Look, I'll get into it now in a few minutes, but again, I'm so proud of everyone that is here, that is speaking about things that are hard to talk about. There's something that they just aren't talked about enough. So I hope you're all happy to be here. I hope you want to listen and kind of educate yourselves more. We're happy to be here as well. But yeah, look, it's Pride. It's Pride weekend. I hope everyone has a good time. And we will have pizza in a little while as well. So look, I hope you're all hungry too.
I promise.
How you doing? My name's Lilith. My pronouns are she, her. I suppose I'm sort of queer, lesbian, bi-lesbian, sort of in that sort of sphere myself. And yeah, I suppose we're here to talk about transition in the workplace, and I actually work in the Transgender Equality Network of Ireland, so it's probably a good place to be trans in the workplace. But yeah, I'm the National Community Development Officer with TENI. So I would work with adults within the community. So people are coming out and they're trying to find access to resources, where to start, support groups, that sort of a thing. Yeah, that's generally what I do. Lots of events, stuff like this, a bit of media stuff. Whatever I'm asked to do, basically. So that's me. I don't know. Do you need to introduce yourself again?
I'm Sarah Phillips, and I'm queer as fuck.
Thank you. Yeah. I suppose I didn't really introduce my identity. I let everyone else just jump in first, so that I, wasn't too nervous. But yeah, like I suppose I would say I'm just quite fluid with my sexuality. It's a spectrum, really. So that's I really like to advocate for it, and that's why I'm here. Usually I'm on the other side of these things. I'm the one drinking and having fun and listening to people talk. Now I'm the one doing this. But yeah, I suppose just to kind of kick off the panel, then discussion, questions, that sort of thing, topics. I'd love to ask, I suppose, each and every one of you, especially with the weekend that's in it, like what does Pride mean to you? And I suppose, why is it important to celebrate? Tash, do you want to kick off?
I guess I will. Pride is a lot of things to me. God. I came out slightly later in life than some other people, and when I did come out, it was a huge change for me as a person, in terms of how I interacted with people, in terms of my confidence. Like it really changed my life. And Pride is just actually like accepting and loving who I am as a person, and also the people around me. Regarding why it's important to celebrate Pride, we have to remember our history, especially as like young queer people. I feel like some of us don't remember or look back to the people that fought or lost their lives, so we can like marry, like hold hands on the street, or like be who we are today. And there's still a lot to go. Like let's not get too ahead of ourselves about it, but the fact is we can do so much of what we can today because of the people before us, and that's the importance of Pride to me. It's a celebration of who we are today, but also the celebration of the people in the past that did what they did so we could be here today, who we are, and literally host and like, being part of this event.
It wasn't working. Oh, it is. It's back. Woo! So Pride for me, I'm from the west of Ireland, so like it's not. Woo! I heard one cheer. Woo! Mayor for Sam. So for me, it's about representation. It's about like it's being there, especially like I live in Dublin 24/7. I go home at the weekends, and it's about being able to kind of be proud of that and not being afraid to kind of show my true colors and have those conversations with family friends that I've had for years and years, and be like this is why, this is what's happening in Dublin. Because as much as we'd love everyone in the whole country to know and be aware and be accepting, it's education. A lot of people don't have that education, and a lot of people don't have those connections. They might have some like friends, sons, like partners, whoever, that it's kind of distant. Now it's getting, people are coming out more, it's more prevalent in the West, but it still is there that we need to kind of create that education. So for me, it's more about like being proud when I go home. That's kind of my thing.
Honestly, very similar to Aisling. I am from a very, very small town, incredibly small. I honestly did not know that I was gay until I came to college. Not because I don't think it wasn't internally that I didn't know, it was that I was never exposed to it, and I think that is the problem in a lot of places. It's the lack of exposure, and I think Pride to me is, it's important to bring that exposure to people regardless of where you're from, very similarly to yourself. There's a lot of people that are stuck in that small town mindset, and I think the statistic is 1 in 3 people are gay. So if you think about the amount of people that's in this room right now, the amount of people that's in my town at home, the metrics don't add up. The people that are actually out don't add up with what the statistics make up. It's so important to educate and bring awareness towards this, and specifically in smaller towns, very similarly to yourself. To me, the importance of it is 1, that I can be who I want to be, and then 2, to kind of bring that exposure towards the LGBTQ community, educate people, make sure that people know, even if you don't, identify yourself as part of the community, that other people know and that are educated, and you can be an ally and be a supportive ally and just know what everything means. And yeah, educate others basically. So it's just genuinely, to me, it's important just to bring awareness and to educate others, I think, more than anything else. So.
That's awesome. I suppose for me, pride for me is pride in oneself. It's the absence of shame. It's there's a lot of talk about the trans community right now. We're kind of the hot topic, and when people talk about us, even in a supportive sense, and very much it's awesome. The thing is, but they're marginalized, and that is true. But for me, when I think of pride, it's about me walking in at my front door with my head held up high, and going out there expecting what I am expecting to be treated as how I should have and how I should be, irregardless of all of that. And that's the way I've always kind of gone ahead with things head first, and it caused a lot of trouble. But that's the way. That's sort of the resolution that I made when I walked out that door for the first time. And I just think it's awesome when you're talking about, like, a third of people identifying on the LGBT spectrum. I have a vivid memory of being about 11 years old in a car, and they were talking about trans people on LMFM, and they were saying that there was 1 in 35,000 people are trans women. And then I was like, well, the population of Drogheda is like 35,000 people. Couldn't be me. So, I mean... I know. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Oh, Jesus, how do I follow all that? I think pride for me is quite a complicated situation. I mean, as I said, my first pride was 1998. And I remember the prides that were protests, really serious protests. But I think I agree with everybody here. I think, first of all, I think pride for me is about showing specifically very young LGBTQI people that actually it's okay to be yourself. I think because even though we've moved so far and we've had so much advancement, it's still not okay. A lot of young people still don't see that support. They don't have that opportunity that it's safe to come out, that they know that if they do come out in their families will be supportive. A lot of that work still has to happen. Despite the marriage equalities of this world and all of that, we still haven't quite achieved this understanding in wider society that it's okay to be gay and it's okay to be trans. So for me, it's about that visibility, that it is okay, because that's what it was for me when I saw trans people on the television or newspapers. Even though they were being talked about in a bad way, it was still there. It was possible. It was something that I could look up to. And I just, one thing that always sticks with me is a really great friend of mine who is no longer with us anymore, who used to say that the moment she found the trans community, she had found her tribe. Well, pride is our tribe. Because every time, as Lilith said, when you walk out that door on Saturday tomorrow morning, that is your family. That is who we are. And to be able to walk out there and be visible with our family doesn't actually happen very often, generally, for us. So to be able to go on that one day, or even around the country now that we have so many different prides around the country, which is even brilliant, down even in the west of Ireland. It's even brilliant, exactly. These are key moments for young people specifically, to be able to see that there are people like them and it is okay to come out, that there is support. So for me, pride is about that visibility. It is about celebration also, that we have come so far. But I never, ever forget that it's still a protest. It is always going to be a protest until such time as we are not only treated equally, but also that it is okay to be LGBTQI in society.
Yeah, well, thank you guys. That was unbelievable. But in fairness, I think personally the acceptance that you feel as well. I never felt right at home. I'm also originally Dublin, but then my parents moved down to back arse of nowhere. So then the real fun started. But just.
Is there anyone from Dublin?
I don't think there's any original doves in here. Real doves. But yeah, it was like once I got out with that then and actually got back up to Dublin, it was just feeling accepted, then being able to kind of be a part of the community and not feel weird. But I suppose then in terms of even talking about like allies and even I suppose more importantly advocacy, like how I suppose I put this question to the panel and whoever feels most comfortable to answer, go ahead. How can we do better? In all walks of life, not like obviously the workplace would be great, but all walks of life, like how can we be better?
I honestly think ask questions. Like the only way you learn is through asking questions, and be that in a corporate setting or a personal setting. Ask people questions. Obviously, not crossing any lines or anything, but genuinely out of a place of care and being passionate about it and wanting to advocate and be an ally. Just ask. I think the only way you learn is to ask and to come to these things, and I suppose that's my piece.
To that in terms of doing your own research. I think research is such an important thing. Often within a lot of marginalised groups, we expect the people within the marginalised groups to be the ones that do the educating. And as much as that is important, it's also important as an ally to go when you do your own research. It shouldn't always be up to the marginalised person to do all the educating. So for me, if it's something you want to learn more about, Google is free. There's so many incredible people online on YouTube and all of that who can do these explanations for you. You can really learn so many valuable things. Like half an hour of your life could change so many people within your immediate circle, within your immediate work life, just by doing some research, knowing how you can be an ally and an advocate, just to support that.
I was just going to there are so many online platforms, there's so many podcasts. If you take 10 minutes out of your day that you would have listened to a true crime podcast, which I would have done every morning, but genuinely listening to something about LGBT allyship or education based over that true crime, I suppose, piece, do that. Like, just educate yourself and genuinely don't obviously put everything on somebody that you know within the community. Don't bombard them with questions, but do educate yourself, but also ask questions. Like, I think both are good, to be honest.
Yeah, from my perspective, like as comms manager, it's my job to communicate. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't be doing my job properly. But like I'm blue in the face trying to get the message across, like whether it's LGBTQI plus or whether it's diversity in general within the tech ecosystem. You know, especially digital marketing, people are sick of reading stuff. People are sick of reading social posts, whether it's blogs, social media, YouTube videos. So again, coming back to your point, doing your own research or prompting if you are a corporate or if you are like it's your personal digital marketing platforms, wherever you are, sending that message out, but also saying like this is how you can educate yourself, this is how you can do your work, and not always leaving it down to say the corporate or the startup having to do everything. Because I know from like a comms point of view, like people tune out. Like there's only so much messaging that can get through from one safe platform. So one to many is great, but also many to one is even better.
I'm going to maybe go by a slightly different tact, and I think what you're saying is completely right. So I just don't know if you're saying the same thing again. But I think that it's important as well that you look around your own environment and you think to yourself, obviously I'm coming from a trans perspective here, and you think to yourself, if one of my colleagues came out, would they feel safe here? If a trans woman was employed by this company, or if we were employing somebody and a trans person applied for this job, would they get an equal crack at the whip? And not just in your workplace, but in your social environments, your clubs, your sports, your whatever it is. Just take that moment if you can. someday or whatever and look around and think, would that trans person feel safe here? Or would the customer that comes into this establishment or comes into this company and that I'm dealing with them, would they be respected just like everybody else? And if you feel like that may not be the case, sit with that, think about it, and then, maybe have a discussion about how that could be changed.
You want me to answer? Yeah, and I mean, again, I think all of these things, every single piece that we're talking about here, are all really valid, and I think every one of them is something that we all should be doing, because I don't think there's necessarily just one answer to this question. I think, in fairness, for me, again, going back to that point of one individual, just if you look back, the amount of ability of one individual being able to make change, I think we need to just step back and ask ourselves, what are we doing in our own lives that adds to this situation? So whether it's about any subject, whatever, it's about, guys speaking about women, whether it's women speaking about other women, whether we're talking about disability, whether we're talking about trans people or LGBT people generally, what can we do to stop some of the toxic and negative discourse that happens on a day-to-day basis every day? And then, for that matter, then about looking at what is our immediate circle, as Lilith said a moment ago. Is there people within our circle that maybe we should be standing up for in a safe way, because we don't want people to get themselves in trouble either, but in a safe way. Because there is a societal-wide conversation that happens naturally. We always talk and we joke and we laugh about things that in reality, when we step back away from those groups or those chats, we are horrified about what's actually been said. And I think it's about trying to change that conversation, change what we can do. So speaking up for individuals, speaking up for people, speaking up for our colleagues or our family or people we know who we grew up with, maybe for instance, it's about doing those small little changes. If we can start with that, then I think then we can start working on a lot of the other things that we need to do as well.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about this sort of event, or just anything around inclusion, anything like that. It's just so important to get everyone's opinions, everyone's points are valid, and I think it's really important for that as well.
Can I just come back in a minute? Just something. Sorry about this. Just something just went through my head about that idea. And it's not always the best campaign that sits well with me. But if we just reflect on, say, the marriage equality campaign, if you think about how that campaign was won, it was always those small little knocks on the door by one or two individuals speaking to one or two individuals about a right that people should have. But that change then spread across the country in order to provide that result. And sometimes it is about that, albeit that has a huge negative impact on the individual, especially when it's our rights or it's our lives we're talking about. So for me, all of our allies and all of the rest of our colleagues and our families, etc., can sometimes, as they did in the marriage equality campaign, knock on those doors for us.
Sarah, I know you did say before this event that you did have a lot to say, and I really appreciate that you are saying it. No, I really appreciate that, Sarah, honestly. So I suppose then just before, we're going to have, I suppose, a quick Q&A, just for, if anyone in the audience would like to ask a few questions. But just before that, I suppose, does anyone have any kind of, I suppose, like last thoughts about, kind of hopes for the future, yeah, I suppose just your kind of final thoughts on, I suppose, your hopes.
I want to continue to be gay.
Yeah, well, I suppose that would be nice, yes. But I suppose for the workplace more so. I probably should have prefaced by saying that.
Still, same sense.
Yeah.
Want to continue to be gay. But honestly, I only started with Trinnovo 3 months ago, and I can say I was in another agency previous to this for 10 months, and I can say that I never once spoke to my boss about anything LGBTQ related. I never felt comfortable doing it. I didn't honestly want to do it. So moving into a situation that I feel like I can do that, you know, bringing your whole self to work, like I guess as the title says, it's so important. You spend 30 to 45 hours a week in work. That is a huge chunk of your life. And if you can't be your whole self, then what is the point? If you are lying to yourself, if you're lying to your workplace, it's hard on you, your mental health. It's just not fair. So you really, I think, even specifically within a corporate situation, it's so important to advocate for this acceptance, because if we don't have that, what do we have? Pride is so important. We have this weekend, but this weekend, it's not just, June is not just Pride Month. All year should be Pride Month. It should consistently be something that's accepted and spoken about. And I think that's the main takeaway from this. If you're in a corporate role, advocate for your LGBTQ friends, advocate for your families. You know, it's super important, I think, in any workspace, because it is such a huge part of your life. So that's my main takeaway from it, I guess.
For me, like I was in a workplace like yourself. Like I didn't come out, I was in corporate for a year and didn't feel comfortable. Not saying that they weren't inclusive, they were great, but just I was stuck in a very small team, mainly kind of middle-aged men, and I just never found the opportunity. They were great, but it was always, what did you do the weekend? And I was like, oh Jesus, what do I say?
Definitely didn't go to the George anyway.
Makes up story immediately. No, but it's for me. I came out during a workshop with Shout Out, who we do workshops with regularly here in Dogpatch and with our community, with our startups. We've tried to get like we have something like 100 and something startups, like, so that's businesses with 500 plus members in our space alone, and they work with thousands of clients. So it's how do we kind of educate them? How do we educate our own team to then kind of spread the message? But the core thing is, as you said, kind of finding that ally as a person of the LGBTQ plus community, and help that ally helping you helping them with education. But like together, you're as a team, because we are a community at the end of the day. We need to help each other up, and I think as Irish people in particular, we're very good at like talking. We're very good at being a community. So why not use that power of the community for good?
So yeah, hopes for the future in an employment context. This is my first time I've ever been on a stage talking about employment, I'm having to kind of shift my mind a little bit. But I suppose like my hopes would be is that in terms of the trans community, that we have the same employment opportunities as everybody else. Our statistics are a little bit old, but we conducted some research in 2013, speaking from the margins, and what that said is that I think it was 49% of the trans community were unemployed. So if we're coming from a point where half of our community aren't even in work, that I guess that's the level that we're coming from, at least back in 2013. So I suppose that would be great. I also just wanted to say that, like, that there when it comes to people excelling in various areas of life, be it the trans people or LGBTQ people, it's. I'm a kind of a working class person, and I always say that I couldn't be here I couldn't be here without the support that I've had from the communities around me. So even looking beyond your own workplace, or looking beyond your own immediate environments, or what you might be thinking of right now, anybody that that within the wider LGBT community or within the trans community, when you support them, when you lift them up, that's how they can excel. And it doesn't have to be just who your colleague might be just across the desk, that they might turn out to be trans or queer or LGBT or whatever terminology you want to use. But lifting everybody up, not just the LGBT community, you know, but people that are minoritized in this society, in this country. If it's people of color, it's black people, it's refugees, it's people in asylum, travelers especially. I mean, I talked about 50% in the traveler community. I think it's something like 85%. You know, think about that. So we as a country, we need to be looking at the minoritized elements within our society and seeing how we can actually bring them into our communities, bring them into our families or found families, and make sure that they can be built up and be the best people that they can be.
To add a little bit to that as well, because unfortunately I am British.
I still love you.
Thanks. I'm still gay, so there's something going for me.
Originally
You're a minority here.
I think it's more recent statistics regarding the trans community. It's one in 3 employers in the UK admit that they wouldn't hire a trans person, and I think that's a lot to and I don't want to get too dark and deep because it is pride, but it is a lot due to the turfism that we see in British society due to some people that I won't mention that wrote some books. And I think that there's really some work to be done there, and I think we're looking at the future and regarding the future, we need to change that statistic. I don't think people think that because they actively hate trans people. I think it's because they actively don't know LGBTQ people, and I think there's a lot we can do in terms of education and just making people get to know us and realise just as a community, we're not there to infiltrate. We're just people, and we just want to, do our thing and live our lives. And I think, yeah, thanks.
For me, I suppose there's a lot. I think what my hope would be is, I suppose, to use the theme of tonight, that we all can go to work, be our best selves, do the work that we are expected to do, but more importantly, be able to go home and enjoy our lives. Because that's all we do work for. It's not about, that should not be our lives. The job is about putting money in your pocket, to put food on the table, to put a roof over your head, and to enjoy your life. That's what it should be about. It should not be about having to strive every day just to pay the bills. And I think that's why I think a lot of what we talk about tonight is intersectional. It's not just about the LGBT community being lifted up. It's about everybody, as Lilith has said. It's about everybody being lifted up. And I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done within companies to actually break down some of the stereotypes that we actually have been traditionally working under. And again, whether that is the type of person that we might think we will employ, the type of person we might think we will promote, the type of person we might think we'll work with or speak to during the day. And I think there's a huge amount of work, and it's incumbent upon employers specifically. They have such an amount of power in our daily lives that they need to take the steps so that we live a culture of diversity and inclusion every day, not when the diversity and inclusion policy officer comes out and talks about it, not when Pride is on, not when we are being told we have to do something. We should always be living it. We should always be doing it. And my hope would always be that we don't have to be talking about these numbers, like as that we've said. One of the key numbers that we got in 2017 was actually that 24% of the trans community wouldn't even bother applying for a job because they didn't think they were going to be given a fair hearing or be able to apply to get into a position of it. And those numbers we need to just get rid of. We need to be able to feel that everybody has the same opportunity as everybody else. And I think for me, that is my hope. And I'll probably be at some point sunning myself off down the Mediterranean with lots of my money that I don't have or something like that, in retirement. But definitely, I think it's about that hope that, we can celebrate, the LGBT community with pride and not have to protest.
Yeah. That's even what I touched on earlier as well. I mean, the job that we're in, I think we have a a good opportunity to really kind of assist with that as much, like as best as we can. And having events like this really helps people learn that didn't know things before. I've learned tonight, I'm sure everyone has, and I think that's our cue to get off the stage.
Pizza.
Hiya. Hi, everyone. Just before we go, because I realise that is very much a get off. I was going to swear. Get off the stage. Get off the stage. I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who came. I personally haven't been too much involved in the organising of this. It's something that I'm hugely, hugely passionate about, but it's literally given me so much hope for Ireland and seeing this, because we only see the negative of it. So greatly appreciate everyone who's been involved in this, giving us amazing space, leading everything, literally being our artist, by the way, absolutely amazing. And just both of you for really kind of trailblazing. I wanted to just jump up and say, I don't think anyone knows how difficult it is to get something like this arranged in such a short amount of time. And we have Brandon to thank for that. He's so passionate about this. We really do. He's so passionate about it. He's on every single meeting, every single day, all the time, with a smile on his face. If you want to go and speak to him, he's always there. And he literally lives inclusivity of, you can go up to him no matter how you look, no matter who you are, and he will just open arms. And he's always positive about it. I'm a negative advocate. I will fight you on anything. And he is complete opposite, and he's so good. And he just allows me to see how far we've come, and it just reminds me all the time. And it's, as I say, it's so difficult to do something like this, so I'm just so appreciative. I just want to jump up before we go and say thank you to everyone. I've networked with everyone tonight, and I'm honestly I'll cry, so I'll stop right now. But this is amazing. It's really given me the best first day in Dublin I've ever seen, and I felt more inclusive here in Dublin than I have in South Africa, in London, in the US. And that shows, being gay has only just been decriminalised, in 1993? And you guys are already way forward of it. So really appreciative. Thank you so much for organising this. I appreciate it.
Well, I don't know how to follow that, but thank you very much, and obviously thank you everyone for coming. You can obviously ask us afterwards. We're going to be having pizza, more free booze. But no, honestly, if you have any questions at all, feel free to ask us. And just lastly, I just want to thank this amazing panel. Thank you so much. And Sarah, your last day speaking for Tenny, thank you so much. This has been amazing. Okay, let's eat.
Thank you, guys.
No.